over and over, and that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, thank you very much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, you know, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it.
That was a clip from Trump's Oval Office meeting with El Salvadorian President Naib Bukele. Their diplomatic exchange mostly involved Trump's desire to deport and detain illegal immigrants to the United States to El Salvador's CECOT prison, the largest maximum security prison in the world. However, a focus point of this meeting is Trump's stance towards wrongly deported immigrant Kilmar García and his blatant refusal to initiate his return despite an official court ruling from the Supreme Court. Apart from Trump's active dismissal of democratic norms, this meeting briefed the American people on Trump's amazing body, his unwavering infatuation with Joe Biden, and the detrimental effects tariffs have had on the economy, and so much more. Hi, my name is Francis. Welcome to the Crude Truth, and without further ado, I present to you the stunning truth about Trump's new alliance. A key part, and one of the only parts Trump has upheld from his campaign promises, is to deport the illegal aliens that are ruining this country. But as always with Trump, his execution and enforcement of this policy has been nothing short of unconstitutional and despotic. A few weeks prior to the meeting, Maryland father Kilmar García was detained by the DHS and deported back to El Salvador's CECOT prison, the largest maximum security prison in the world, under the suspicion that he was part of the MS-13 gang. His deportation with little to no concrete evidence, on top of him having withdrawal to return status, was deemed an administrative error by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled that the Trump administration was to facilitate the return of this innocent man to his wife and child back in Maryland. Trump's response?
Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Now, the court they are referring to is the United States Supreme Court, the final arbiter of and enforcer of the Constitution. Now, as the final arbitrator of the Constitution and federal law, the Supreme Court sees to it that the nation's legal system is consistent and just. In this case, the Supreme Court ruled that the deportation of Kilmar Ábrego García was an administrative error on the part of the Trump administration and that they were to facilitate the return of the Maryland resident. They refused.
This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
Now, the truth may stand that the Supreme Court doesn't have any direct involvement in the enforcement of American foreign policy, but it gains jurisdiction when that foreign policy violates the Constitution. When the Supreme Court makes a ruling, it's definitive, it's final. And any abridgment of those rulings is indicative of democratic backsliding. It has once been said that the Supreme Court is distinctly American in concept and function. The Supreme Court is the highest judicial order in the land, predicated on democratic principles that serve as the adhesive responsible for maintaining law and order. President Trump's decision to ignore the concrete, conclusive rulings of the Supreme Court unironically make him the most un-American man in the country and shed light to the wrath of autocracy. All the same, Trump has no intention of ensuring Garcia returns home safe, just as he couldn't care less of what happens to this guy, this guy, this guy, or all these other guys. Neither does Bukele, but it shouldn't come as a surprise. Taking a look at Bukele's political resume, I'm positively sure he isn't the law-abiding type.
Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo liberaría,
President
Presidente
what is your-
Bukele?
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, Washington suggested that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's only
How
CNN.
can I return him to the United States? Like, if I smuggle him into the United States, or whether I do it first, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back?
All that Donald Trump cares about is consolidating power in all three branches of the United States government to further his autocratic, despotic, and fascist agendas with little resistance. Trump does not care about improving healthcare and education, but I'll tell you this, he does care about gutting the funding for cancer research in the Department of Education. He doesn't care about lowering costs for everyday Americans, but he does care about imposing tax cuts for his billionaire friends and market-crashing tariffs. Ambitious economic plan which promised to bring manufacturing jobs from China to the US, make the average American richer, and so on and so forth, has brought about a chain of disapproval from many independents.
We're going to look at the worst ever at this point in a presidency. The old record among independents for the worst ever was Donald Trump back in 2016, a net approval rating of minus 16 points. Well, Donald Trump has broken his own record here. He now holds, in this particular term, the worst ever net approval rating at this point in a presidency among independents at, get this, minus 22 points.
Despite Trump's blunt attempt to strike fear to the hearts of those who dare to oppose him, in any case, the resistance has been outspoken.
Turn to the people around you. Commit to call or text each other. Say, hey, there's a Tesla picket. Let's meet up there. Or, I heard there's a picket line with striking workers. Let's both grab some friends and meet up there.
So here's my final message for you. I'd like you to take a good look at the current state of your life. Beliefs are not being suppressed by authoritarian oligarchs. Are you free? Let that be the determinant for what you fight for. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We are almost to 300 subscribers. I'd appreciate that if we hit that before the end of April. My output on the situation is that this is undemocratic, it's un-American, as I said in the video, and for the President of the United States, the President of the nation that is the pinnacle of democracy and freedom of expression and so on and so forth, for someone to abridge the will of the American people so voted for him and regretting it, or didn't vote for him and are still regretting it. Bottom line is, Trump is a bad guy. Trump is an undemocratic guy. Trump is a threat to American democracy, a threat to if you allow yourself to admit defeat